Hello everybody, Demon Red Mist here. Okay, I'm doing a quick live stream, a little bit of a feature. Last season in the Dynamic GT League, I started doing a few hot laps with a few hints and tips. And I'll try and do the same for the next championship, which is coming up, which starts this Thursday, using the Toyota SFR racing concept car. I will quickly mention as well, I may have to disappear at any point, as in jump off the mic for a minute. I've sold a vacuum cleaner and they said they'll be here any time before 6:30. So I'm going to try and rush through this, but I may have to go and answer the door at some point. And knowing what selling stuff is like on Facebook, there'll be a haggle, they'll want to try it, they can't just go, yeah, I agreed to a tenner. Anyway, so the Toyota SFR, I'm going to show it around Catalunya. It's the first track that Dynamic GT League is going to use for the SFR Championship. Now, one thing that I didn't do last season in the last championship was play about much with setups. I didn't do a lot. Now, I did do a bit of practice in this car before Christmas. And found that it didn't quite handle how I wanted it to, so I made a few changes and had a look at a couple of things. So I'm actually going to show the setup that at the moment I'm going to be using this Thursday. I've got no plans to change it unless something magical comes along. Now, I will state this is by no means going to be the best setup you could possibly have on this car. All I know is that when I drove it, I made these changes and got faster and faster and more comfortable with the car, how it handled, how it braked, how it turned, how it exited corners, how long the tyres lasted, and lap times improved dramatically. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. Racing Super Softs aren't very good on this particular car. They will not last very long. Probably still use them in qualifying, but I've not done a lot of laps on them, so I'm actually quicker at the moment on the softs than I am the supers. Brake balance, I've moved it to the front by 2 clicks, so -2 to the front. This just makes the car brake considerably better. Doesn't mean you can brake much later, but it just means you can. When you apply the brakes, it does brake better. Okay, ride height. I have dropped front and rear to the deck, and I've done that for a reason. The last couple of corners around Catalunya, the Mickey Mouse chicane with the massive sausage curbs, I can get through those no problem, and using a lot of the curb. So that's what I do around this track. If I can run very low down ride height and cope with those curbs, I know I'm okay. So that's what I've done. If you're struggling with the curbs, it's probably because of how you're driving through them, and hopefully I'll be able to show that. The natural frequency, this is the change that I made on this car that made the biggest difference, and I've moved it to 1.85. Its default was lower, I think it was 1.60 or 1.70. I went much higher to see what the effect was, and then sort of tapered it down until it felt really, really good, and 1.85 is where I got to. And you have to have the front and rear the same. Anti-roll bar, I've not touched that, so that's still 7 and 4, and the damping ratios, I haven't touched those either, so they're still 60, 60, 90, 90. The camber angle, and I know a few people have played about with the camber angles on this car and it hasn't worked. Me personally, I tried a few different ones and found 1.5 on the front and the rear just gave a very nice balance, and when the tyres wear, the car still handles pretty well. You have to still drive around the crappy tyres, but it's still drivable. Toe angle, out at 0.25 and in at 0.25. Works for me. There is no downforce. I haven't touched the drivetrain settings. I have played about with the gears though. Okay, there it says 211, but that's because we hang on a sec. Yeah, we went for a drive around Le Mans, so the setup is actually exactly the same for Spain, apart from the gears. Yeah, the setup is all exactly the same. Okay, so what I've done with the gears is I've put the max speed auto set to 186, and then I have adjusted these gears. I mean, they might actually still be default, but this is what I've got my gears set to, so you can have a look at this and adjust it. On this particular ratio, I did have to shorten 6th gear because when I did a test, I found I was a little bit too long even in a slipstream. The thing is, this car is so deceiving because at Le Mans we were getting 200 miles an hour in slipstream. It is capable of that amount of speed. Okay, I'm going to go out onto the track then, and this will be where the doorbell goes. I'm going to go out on track. This car is a very interesting one because you can't brake late in it. It's a racing concept car, and unfortunately there is no in-car view, which is a shame for me, but I'm going to use the bonnet view because then I can see plenty. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, you can't brake late in this car. It doesn't like it. You can try, and you can still just about stay on the track, and you might even gain time on the way into a corner, but you will lose it all on the exit. So once you sort of get to the middle of the corner, way offline, because you brake too late, you're going to lose all the time you gained. So don't go braking late in this car. It doesn't work. What you're better off doing is braking what I would call early. If you've ever driven around this track in a proper race car or an F1 car, you can't brake at F1 points. If you do, you'll lose loads of time. So I'll try and point out sort of when I'm braking, and a lot of it is to do with the red flashing in the centre of the bottom of the screen. That is always your indicator of when the game is saying you should be braking, but when you're on racing tyres you can usually brake a little bit later. The question is, how late? So yeah, so don't brake too late. You will not gain time in this car. Once you've got the car slowed down nice and early, you can then gain loads of time through the corners because this car handles beautifully. Now, one thing that some people may have noticed around this particular track and that corner I've just been round is that they're losing the rear end. The rear end is just sliding out on them, trying to spin them around. And that will often be if you're using second gear and your second gear is too short. So basically you knock it down to second and it locks the rear wheels up because they can't go that fast. So by having the gear ratio that I've got, second gear is a little bit longer, helps through that particular corner, which in turn helps in a lot of other corners. Okay, turn one. Braked probably a little bit too early, but you see the car still wants to run wide. And now this corner, the biggest tip I can give for this corner... Sorry, I just got a message saying turn brake indicator. No. So you put me off then. Yeah, so turn 3, the biggest tip I can give anyone is if you floor it, if you are flat out into it, you will not come out of it that quick. But if you do a little lift on the way into it, your car will be much more stable, you won't hurt the tyres as much, you'll be able to come out of it much faster. Now, one of the ways that I found to gain time in the braking with this car is once the red flashes, you only wait a moment, you don't wait long at all. Now, I'm not fully up to speed yet, I'll try and sort of point it out here for the hairpin, so keep an eye out. So flashing, I'm not waiting long at all. I think for turn 1, I think it's about 140 metres I'm braking. That's just a guess. There is a black mark, a black box on the side of the road that I know Dave the Harper's using as a braking point, but I brake much earlier than that. And the key to this final chicane is to not go too fast here so that you can straddle this curb and then straddle that curb, and the car will handle it easily. If you go into the chicane too fast, you will not get over those curbs and you will not exit the corner as fast as you should. Okay, so let's try and do this without Steve putting me off this time. So on the fence on the left hand side is a black box, but I'm going to brake before that. So flashing now and letting the car get down into the apex of the corner. We're right on the limit. Little lift. And now control the throttle, and now we can power all the way out with no understeer, no killing of the tyres. Flashing's going to happen, and then we brake nice and early. In an F1 car, we'd brake at the bridge. you don't want to do that, because if you go in a little bit slower, you can then come out a hell of a lot faster. And again here, flash, brake. Even that was a little bit too late, managed to tuck into the apex. But once you got it slowed down and into the apex, you can get onto the power very early. Flash, brake. And this corner, don't do it flat out. I take it in third, go in fourth, little touch of brake if I need to, and then flat out in third. I didn't go through there very nicely, to be honest. Okay, flash in, brake. And I'll try and use some of the marks on the road as my braking points. And second gear around here is absolutely fine. If you go in too fast again, you can't exit very fast. Use this curb, don't worry about going on two wheels. Brake at the bridge or before, bit wide there, but straddle the curb, no problem. Early on the power and flat out through the final corner. So a lot with this car is not going into the corner too fast. Right, so let's see, there's the 200, yeah, so it's about 150, 140 that I'm braking for turn one. Okay, so better line through here this time, little lift, let the front turn in, and then control the throttle around the corner. It's going to want to run a little wide, but we can keep going as long as it doesn't do that. And kill the tyres. Son of a gun. Right, let's get back. Fresh set of tyres, please. Now, I know that I'm not being particularly exact with my braking points, and I think in a way it's because I tend to I don't really think about where I'm braking anymore. I just tend to do it. It becomes an automatic process. I'm not waiting for a particular marker board or anything like that, especially around circuits that I know very well, like this one. But a good example of braking too late, I'll try it in this particular corner. I would normally brake now. So I didn't even brake at the bridge, but I was much closer to an F1 braking point and not making the corner. So don't brake late. And the same thing happens here. If you brake too late here, you'll find yourself over here recovering the car rather than clipping that apex and powering through the corner. Let's see if I can take a better line through here this time. Not having to use the brake much at all through there. If you actually lift, I wouldn't necessarily say early, but if you prep the car early and lift, you can just drop it down to third and then floor it all the way through the corner. So if you've been running wide a lot in that corner, it might be because you're in fourth gear and just going a little bit too fast. I haven't actually driven for a few days, so I've got to get back into the rhythm of it. I'm braking before the bridge there, straddle curb, try and straddle curb, and if you don't, be aware the car may want to slide the rear out, so you just need to be prepared to apply a little bit of opposite lock. Okay, so we know at turn one I'm braking at about 150, 140 metres. Let's see if we can find any kind of marking on the road. Not really. So you are probably just going to have to sort of wing it. I mean, I am kind of seeing the black box on the fence and braking before that. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. Okay, again, up here, get all the way over to the left-hand side. Red will flash, brake early. Don't downshift too quick in this car either. You'll just lock the rear axle. And you'll notice that I'm kind of taking my time getting to the apex of the corner, so I'm not rushing, I'm not aggressive on the brakes, I'm not aggressive on the gear shifts. the car is nice and stable for me because I'm driving it that way. A little late, now I'm wide. I can still recover it and go through it quick, but not as quick as if I'd prepped the car a little bit sooner. There is a mark on the road here that I'm using as a sort of a backup braking point, so to speak, a reference point. I'll try and point it out on the next lap. And again here, not full brakes, gentle brakes, let the car get part way around the corner. That curb, that extra sort of nub of a curb, you should be able to go flat out by if you've got the entry right. Okay, so lost a little bit of time in that final sector. So yeah, black box on the fence, and I'm braking before that, and I am braking hard for turn one so that I can be off the brakes by the time I get to the corner. And I'm being patient through here. Little lift allows the front of the car to turn in, and you'll see I'm not really going full throttle until I'm part way round the corner. Okay, I'm going to brake a little earlier this time. And you can push this car quite a bit. Once you've got it going into the corner, you can really throw it about a little bit. But if you haven't got it going in right, it ain't going to come out right. Okay, lift early, down a gear, easy onto the apex, easy flat out. See how much time we may have gained there. Marking on the floor, rubber markings now. You'll see around here I'm not pushing, I'm not trying too hard, I'm letting the car do the work. Brake before the bridge, get it turned in, straddle, floor it, easily stable as long as you straddle those curbs. Okay, so once again, braking at about the 140 before the black box. Oh no, I was too lazy on the downshifts then. Right, now this time what I'll do, I'm not going to actually push here. Another tip for people on this particular corner, something that some people will find very difficult to get their head around on this particular corner. If you're on a pad, it might not affect you as much. If you're on a wheel, it definitely will. And this is, if your car starts understeering around this corner, steering more will not help you. You are better off lifting off your throttle a little bit, coming off your steering a little bit, and then steering again and finding the grip. That will help you. If you try and steer more, you're just going to understeer more. Bit hard to get your head around sometimes, but once you start doing it, you really notice it. You notice it more so in very fast cars. Or race cars, F1 cars, LMP1 cars, stuff like that. Now the lap time I've done so far is nowhere near my personal best. Right, so I've not actually driven since... I did a couple of hours on different tracks a few days ago, but it wasn't anything special. Okay, so down here I want to point out the markings on the road that I'm using. Okay, if I stop here, just ahead of me, directly ahead of me, is one sort of little streak of rubber right ahead of me, and then just beyond that it's like two streaks of rubber. So here's the one right here, and here is the two. So this is kind of what I'm using as my sort of reminder. You can use this as a braking point, and looking at the brake marker boards, we again are at about 150 meters. So if you're struggling to find something, use the markings on the road, because on GT I don't think those markings change. Now, I know I haven't talked much about this next corner coming up. This next corner that's coming up is the corner that will dictate how you can take the rest of the final chicanes. And this is a corner where, excuse me, I don't brake a lot, but I do tend to lift quite early. I'd probably say somewhere around about here, before the end of the curb by a long way. I'm down in second gear and turning in nice and early because I want my car positioned here. Yes, I'm on the curb, I want to be. So I want my car positioned here, which will allow me to carry the speed out the corner and then brake here for the final corner. If you brake at or beyond this bridge, you will lose time in those final corners. If you brake before this bridge, you can always make those corners. Obviously, if you've got a load of cars in front of you, you may have to brake a little bit sooner, but you brake before that bridge, these corners suddenly become a hell of a lot easier. And if you get yourself into this position, you've already got the car slowed down nicely, so now you can just focus on straddling the curb, and absolutely flooring it out of the final corner. Okay, now my tyres are a little bit worn at the moment, so it's going to be a little more difficult to get a decent lap time out of this. So now I'm having to go down to second gear for turn one because the tyres are hurting a bit more. And now I've learned that I could choose to brake a little bit earlier and see if I can still do it in third gear, or do it the way I just did, knowing that I'm going to need second gear. And to be honest, when your tyres start going, quite often it's a lot easier just to use a slightly lower gear in some of the corners. So with a worn front left tyre, it didn't want to go around that corner how I'd been taking it previously. But that's what you have to learn, and that's what you have to prepare for. Okay, so we're going to lift off nice and early. The car still don't want to make that corner. The tyres hurting on the brakes. See, make this corner easy even though the tyres are hurting. And another thing you can do is, for example, around this track, the front left tyre is hurting a lot, but the front right tyre is not as bad. It means you can still push a little harder through the left hand corners. Little lift. You see, I'm not trying to go full throttle around that corner. If I do, I'm just going to absolutely destroy my tyres. I probably could brake a little bit later in this particular corner, but when the tyres are worn, it's not worth taking much of a risk. There, I'm starting to brake a little bit later, and instead of gaining time, I'm losing a lot by missing the apex of the corner. It means I'm on the power later. even though my tyres are worn now, adjusting the way I'm driving and going down or braking a little bit earlier through certain corners or going down an extra gear, I'm still actually able to make the corners. Okay, it was still half a second slower than the previous lap, but that's what you'll need to do. If you want to take your tyres a little longer, you're going to have to be prepared to do that. Right, I'm going to chuck the Racing Super Soft tyre on for one last run before I get ready to answer the door, seeing as the time is now 6:05. Okay, so I'm going to go for sort of one last run and try and see what I can get out of this. Now the super soft tyres are effectively a quicker tyre, but this is a circuit where sector 1 hurts the sector 1 and the start of sector 2 hurts the tyres so much that by the time you get to sector 3, when you really need grip, you don't really have a lot. Now in a qualifying run, for example around turn 3, you probably can get away with a little lift and being full throttle through this corner, because you don't have to worry about looking after the tyres. What you might want to do though is not drive too aggressively on your out lap, because any life you use up of the tyre on your out lap is time lost on your flying lap. Notice I have been braking at these tyre marks. I've had no problems whatsoever making these corners. It's not dangerous, it's not risky. Now I'm doing a slow run through the chicane there, but that's just to try and get a little bit of extra straight line speeder down here from having a better exit. Okay, let's see what we can do then. Braked a little bit too late, had to get down to third. Starting to understeer, so come off the steering a little bit and it regains the grip. Brake too late, loses a little bit of time middle of the corner. Now on the super soft tyre, you may have noticed just then I went through the left-hander in third gear, not second. And that's because with the extra grip of this tyre, it can do it in third. Too hard here. You don't gain time by pushing hard here. Not bad. 48.3. I know I've been faster than that, but there you go. So that's about all the laps I'm going to be able to do right now. But hopefully there's a setup there that's going to allow people to get a little bit more out of the car and hopefully explained a little bit about where to make a few small benefits around this circuit. I know I haven't sort of gone into a lot of detail on this video, it's just I am a little pushed for time. So what I will say is, to any of the DGT League drivers, I definitely should be on tomorrow for practice. This evening I'm not sure, but tomorrow I will be available. But if anyone's got any questions or any corners that they're struggling with, feel free to message me on Facebook, and I can always help where I can there. Other than that, yeah, main tips in this car is enjoy it. Don't brake late, get it into the apex of a corner, and then you'll find you can push it quite hard on the exit of a corner. The trick to this car is getting it slowed down for the corners, and if people can get that right, we're going to be on for some amazing racing in this championship coming up, because these are really good, fun little cars to drive. Anyway, that's all from me for this evening. I'm going to go and get ready to sell my vacuum cleaner, and then I think Steve might be coming around, so we'll see what we're going to get up to this evening. So I hope everybody has a good new year. We are now officially in 2019, so yeah, have fun. See you later.